Good afternoon and welcome at the Diplomatic Academy for our today's meeting in Your Questions, Our Answers, Diplomacy from Russia with Love. We have decided that in a given situation, we should talk with experts on the situation of energy, but not simply about the situation of energy and the situation of gas, although this is a political issue that we are discussing every day, but actually about the geopolitical situation of natural gas in the current given moment. That's why we called it From Russia with Love. As you are all aware, we are in a situation in the European Union which is different between the member states, but which is a strong dose of dependency on imports from Russia, which has actually developed over the last decades. In the case of my own country, Austria, it has developed over the last more than 50 years. And the Austrians politically used to be very proud to be the first one who got a contract with the Soviet Union more than 50 years ago. And I remember just a few years ago, we celebrated even this anniversary together with the heads of Gazprom and actually also with the inclusion of President Putin here in Vienna. The situation has certainly changed. But what has not changed is the geopolitical role of gas and the issues around that. So I'm very happy that we can discuss with experts what a lot of people call now geoeconomics. And this includes, in the case not only of natural gas, issues of production, issues of exploration, issues of supply lines, speak about either pipelines or ships, LNG, as gas-compatible ships. But it also includes issues that we normally, in our democratic situation, think that are quite easy to solve. The question of supply and demand, which decides on the price of a commodity. It is obvious that in the given situation, this is not a real market situation we are in. And I think we should use this hour to discuss why this has happened, what does it mean, can we make a change in the energy mix that we have, or should we maybe do something like Mr. Draghi yesterday proposed, the Italian Prime Minister, to create a cartel of energy consuming states? And we should use our consumer market power. I'm not an expert on this, but I guess a lot of people will now make proposals to make the role of the consumers in the energy markets stronger, if possible, and especially on the one side oil, on the other side gas. And also yesterday in the European Union, an expert opinion was published which said that the EU will need over the next 5 years an investment of 195 billion euro to make itself independent of energy from Russia. My question is an introduction to our speakers, and then I pass on to our moderator. Should we create a buyers club? Is it possible to create such a buyers club? Can we afford this? And what happens in this issue, which we called From Russia with Love, ? So I hope that we can use this hour for discussing many of these issues, and welcome again on behalf of the Diplomatic Academy. Over now to Ms. Bujak.
Good afternoon. Welcome again. I will moderate this event. Concerning the audience online, you have the possibility to raise questions during the event via our chat on the Facebook site. We have two experts for this afternoon. First, I would like to present Mrs. Karolina Cegir. Karolina holds a bachelor degree in petroleum engineering from Cegir University and an MSc degree in renewable from the Technical University of Vienna. Before joining the Energy Community Secretariat in Vienna in 2007, she worked in a transmission system operator in Croatia in different sectors, from maintenance, operations, system development, and regulation. The focus of her work is on various aspects of natural gas, from regulatory to technical, and the scope of work includes monitoring the implementation of mandatory existing acquis by the contracting parties and supporting their understanding of new and upcoming trends, such as dealing with methane emissions and considering hydrogen acceptance. She follows closely the Ukrainian gas sector from the last decade. Welcome, Karolina.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Andrius Šimkus. He works for the law company Sorainen as counselor. This is the biggest law company in the Baltic states. He's an expert in energy law, regulation, policy, strategy, and management. He has practiced in the energy sector since 2005 and specializes in the fields of electricity, gas, including LNG, renewable energy sources, nuclear energy, energy efficiency, energy markets, climate change management, and other related areas. Providing wide chain service in the energy sector from lawmaking to daily business operators, he's always able to offer his clients tailor-made, complex, and non-standard solutions. So he's a man of energy in the world, as we see. Professional highlights from him are he authored and co-authored over 200 legal acts regulating relations in the energy sector in 17 European jurisdictions, including the Baltic states, Ukraine, Georgia, and Albania. He also contributes to the establishment of the LNG terminal in Klaipėda, and worked on the certification of the TAP gas pipeline. This is in Albania, Greece, and Italy. The development of legal framework for gas storage in Georgia and organizational setup of the gas transmission system of Ukraine. So he holds a diploma in international nuclear law nuclear energy law of the University of Montpellier in France, and law MA in law from the Mykolas Romanas University in Lithuania, and he was visiting student in international and European law studies at the University of Ghent. Welcome, Andrius. And so we have decided the first to talk would be Karolina. So Karolina, it's your floor, please.
Well, thank you very much for the floor, and thank you very much for invitation. It's a really interesting time to jump in with all consideration which we all have, and maybe to put more even geopolitical or more engineering, statement in this field, because I am engineer by education and I would say even by heart as well. So from Russia with love. So for a long time, that was actually for decades, as Mr. Brix said, that was long-lasting and long time constructed relationship, and actually nothing was wrong with that, if you put it that way. I mean, even last year everything was fine, although this 2021 looks so far away from now. Here is just illustration actually on European needs for gas, and you might see this structure many times, but okay, one part goes from domestic production, and here please note that here Norwegian is also not in European Union, but as Europe producers, and then this part coming from other pipelines from North Africa, and then majority or last year was even 40% supplied from Russia. In that supply, it's of course the main route is Ukrainian route, Nord Stream 1, and then Turkish Stream and this Blue Stream supplying Turkey and Southeast Europe. It was Yamal, but Yamal lost actually this importance because Poland was relying more on other sources, and Germany as well. and everything was kind of in expectation to have Nord Stream 2 in place, and it was just about to happen with certification and with starting supply through Nord Stream 2. If you look at the quantities, you will immediately see that actually Nord Stream was always kind of, I mean, somebody would claim commercial pipeline because it is meant to supply Germany mainly, and this huge German industry needs. But it was always put in place to avoid Ukraine, and as some Ukrainians would say previously, that everything will be fine until Russia needs transit through Ukraine. At the moment when this will not be the case, Russia will attack Ukraine. So I heard this many times, but somehow it was hard to believe it. Especially in these circumstances that European developed gas market, everything liquid, everything fine, even storages were not so important anymore, and everything was flowing smoothly, because that was even started and done in the time of the Cold War, and it functioned. So that was a long time ago, last year, let's say, in that way. And here on this screen, you also have this, let's say, structure of supply to different parts of Europe, because it's easy to say everything will be replaced. In total numbers, everything is fine. Let's see how it will work with LNG and increased production and so on. Yes, this might be the case for Western Europe, this might be the case for Southern Europe, but Central and Eastern Europe, as you can see, it would be very, very difficult to replace all these quantities imported from Russia. So for the next slide. So what we are going to do so in 2022, so you can see bar of supply, this approximately 500 BCM needed per year, and this 155 BCM imported from Russia, which has to be replaced. So what to do? I mean, maybe to increase supply through Algeria, from the pipelines, to increase production. So there are discussions with Norwegian producers, with UK, that this is on the level to be increased 15, 16 BCM. LNG 70 BCM. I would say that this is more this green part showing unused capacity of LNG terminals in Europe. If this is possible to get all, having in mind that the gas market is global market, and then this LNG supply is anyhow very tight and with huge needs in Asia. So it's not so obvious that this 70 BCM can be supplied from LNG. Here, US promised to go with 15 BCM, but if you compare 15 and 155, it's still big gap. So what else? Yeah, maybe from storages, but that would be solution in the case of disruption. But once when you deplete storages, you have to fill them, and this gas to fill the storages should come again from somewhere. And then demand side measures, and you see that this is not so small quantity, so this is around 60 BCM. So all in all, it's going to be very challenging year, and especially winter. Because if you have a look at the storages, so what was at the beginning, I mean, here is last five years, how filling the storages was going through the summer. So depends when you stopped on the 1st of April, and then possibilities, if everything is normal, to fill it, those storages by the heating season, by the 1st of October. And it went from year to year very differently, depending on the price, on liquidity of market, on decision of traders, and since market was more and more liquid, less and less gas was stored in storages. But last year actually happened very interesting thing and many factors at once. So gas prices went up, and then traders were not so eager to buy on high prices and to store the gas, maybe waiting for better prices to come. It happened also that actually what was not so important before, that Gazprom has own storages in European Union, in many of the countries. And it might be that it was already decision last summer not to fill it gas in facilities in European Union, maybe knowing that something will happen next season, and then this gas maybe will not be available or whatever, from different reasons. European Commission, of course, would like to have member states prepared for the next winter. There is discussion on putting obligation to fill storages by the 1st of October on the level of 80%, or maybe to take percentage of own consumption in the country. This is still not approved. I believe that it's going to be this month or very early June. But then if member states will have this obligation to go whatever, 80% or 70% by the 1st of October, this is going to be very, very difficult without Russian gas. So you can see the map, you see the different colors. So this is projection done by ENSOC, and they counted like Russian supplies stop on 1st of April. So this didn't happen, so you can add maybe 10% to those numbers, but it's very visible that Western Europe is fine because of LNG. This is it, but then Germany and Italy and the eastern part of Europe would have really half-empty storages for the next winter. And this would be very, very, very challenging. Even those countries which are actually claiming, no, we don't, like my own country, Croatia, we have LNG, we don't import Russian gas. Yes, not directly, but this is all very much interconnected. So what to do? I mean, things are changing from day to day. It was seen recently that I mean, Russia and Gazprom, they put the same kind of obligation to all companies to pay in rubles, to open these two accounts. I mean, one like to keep this euro and dollars payment, and another one immediately on which this transaction would be done in rubles. So some of the countries didn't do it. I mean, Lithuania was the first one saying even at the beginning of April, no, we are not going to pay in rubles, and everything stopped. But luckily, having LNG terminal, Lithuania is in better position. The same happened with Poland. I mean, Poland was also somehow on the more secure side with all this LNG and having new interconnector with Lithuania, actually on the 1st of May, and preparing this new pipeline to bring Norwegian gas. So Poland was actually in the last decade very much preparing to similar situation. If you talk with Polish gas people, they would say, we just opened our eyes when the event on 2009 happened. So we knew it, that we have to do all possible interconnectors, just not to rely on Russian gas. Then with Bulgaria actually happened the same, but now you can see that actually all these European rules somehow had a value, because it was all with agreements, with enabling reverse flow, with finding different suppliers immediately, and Bulgaria really this cut of Russian supply, I mean, passed smoothly by now. Even transit is going, so all kind of European rules are in place, and Bulgaria is filled with gas for demand as it is now. Then just event by event, now you see that together with this military operation actually, and taking maybe more territory of Ukraine or on the east, it was just time to start to manipulate flows. And then Ukrainian TSO made a decision that since these compressor stations on the east, they are not under their control, and they cannot control the flow and what is happening there, they just announce force majeure, and then that this interconnection point is not going to be considered as a transit anymore. I mean, not to receive nominations. So this means actually 1/3 of capacity needed for transit to Europe. So far, because it's summer, because it's Nord Stream is there, nobody in European Union still feel this 1/3 of reduction, but we never know, I mean, what can happen very next day. I mean, this morning it was announcement of the decision from Russian side that certain European companies will be under the sanction. I mean, mainly these Gazprom daughters, just overtaken by European companies. But we are living in very, very insecure times. So what can bring some solution for the next winter, and then let's think about next few winters in future. It's really to put cooperation between all stakeholders, all countries, with really open heart and not having closed minds, and to hide something, because LNG can come, but then infrastructure is needed to bring it to different countries which they don't have these possibilities. So a lot of paperwork, a lot of commercial work, a lot of cooperation on different levels. I mean, being between companies, institutions, in the format of gas supply coordination group, and even with demand measures. So I don't believe that next winter we will have 25 degrees in our flats. So it's going to be more cold, but I think that we can all do it and just survive it, and to rethink about entire energy sector and this dependence which we have. I think that would be from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karolina, for your very detailed presentation. I will now give the floor to Andrius. He comes from the Baltic states. As we have seen, they have done already some more homework than the Western states of Europe. So please, Andrius, it's your floor.
Thank you very much, Melusine. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and thank you very much to the Diplomatic Academy for inviting me. And it's definitely my biggest pleasure to be on the same panel with Karolina, with whom we shared the same office for 5 years. I kind of directed my presentation to talk about the new realities of the security of gas supply, and definitely being my country's and my region's representative, I will talk about the Baltic case and something important what we just did recently and for what we were preparing actually for decades. To start with, I would like to go back a little bit in time because there were times back in 2015, 16, 17, when I was talking in events at the same diplomatic academy, just alive in Vienna. And we were discussing many things in our annual gas conferences, including relations with Gazprom, Nord Stream case, and things like that. And I just opened my presentations exactly from 2015. And I saw some statements which I was delivering to the audience. And you know, this is the moment when you want to say, I said so. But on the other hand, it is a moment of sadness that indeed I was true while talking about Russia, about Russia's geopolitical and specifically energy strategies and policies. So what was the message which was delivered already many times, not only by me, but also by tens and probably hundreds of other experts who knew what could come if Russia is being relied upon too much. So in between 1991, that is after fall of the Soviet Union, 2004, in the Baltics and Central European Union, in Central and Eastern Europe, we had over 40 politically motivated interruptions in Russian energy supplies. Should we expand the geography, there would be much and significantly much more events, so to say, bigger or smaller, when energy supplies were interrupted due to some political incentives from Russian energy suppliers. In Ukraine, Russia escalated gas supply cutoffs, and we cannot forget that in 2006, 2019, 2015, and during the last couple of years, it was a constant pressure that something can turn wrong, that gas supplies cannot be secured. Russia's Gazprom complained many times to the public that the infrastructure of Ukraine cannot be trusted, which of course is a simply blatant lie, and things like that. So this story with gas supplies and interruptions and cutoffs continues now for years. In the Baltics, since some time ago, we were 100% dependent on Russian gas supplies. Gazprom was dictating prices using other leverages of monopolized markets. And it was some period of time when Lithuania, purely because of political reasons, was paying the highest gas price in Europe. And that continued basically until we launched our LNG terminal in Klaipėda back in 2014. Now, what about Europe? Because Russia wasn't able to do what it did without its support in Europe. So actually, European countries, the strongest economies, were increasingly strengthening Russia's leverage to manipulate and to blackmail all of us with gas supply via Ukraine and Yamal. And I remember when in 2015 in the conference, I said that there is a huge chance that if Russia is given an opportunity, is given proper circumstances, might limit gas supplies through Yamal. I was laughed out. I was called a Russophobe, but apparently just a couple of weeks ago, we saw that this is true. So what European countries did? So Germany completed Nord Stream campaign, and there is an asterisk close to the word completed because the campaign didn't fall out completely because, well, Nord Stream 2 was stopped, thanks God, at least something. Austria and partners failed with the South Stream campaign, so that was some win on Europe's side, while Turkey completed Turk Stream campaign and together with Blue Stream actually diverted gas supplies through Ukraine to another direction through Turkey to Bulgaria and North Macedonia. As concerns Russia, Russia's military aggression in Europe is not something new. It started war against Georgia in 2008, and it started war against Ukraine since 2014. It was Donbass continuing, Crimea, but still the European Union was treating and labeling Russia as a reliable partner in energy matters. So these were messages which were broadly discussed several years ago, already 7-8 years ago. But what we did, actually, we did not much in the EU to change the situation and to divert from consuming and being reliant on and dependent on Russian gas. So I took here a small piece of history of natural gas imports from Russia. So specifically in this graph, we see basically that Europe didn't react to Russia's aggressive policies, and ups and downs in gas supplies from Russia were basically dictated by economic situation and by economic needs. So if you have an economic certain still, then of course there are less imports of natural gas. Exactly the perfect illustration is of course 2019, 2020 with Corona situation. But as you can see, since 2014, the general increase is very visible, despite the fact that exactly in 2014 Russia attacked Ukraine. So in this regard, Europe prevented as if nothing happens, and if we can truly rely further on Russian gas and on European-Russian energy partnership. So in numbers, actually, this means hundreds of billions of euros spent. And in this overall approximately 70% of gas import dependency of the EU, this chunk, almost half of it was coming, a little bit less than half was coming from Russia. So what were the reasons for keeping up with gas dependency? Because, well, obviously there should be certain reasons. And if I wanted to verbalize it in one word, and that word would be comforts. So basically, just to think out systemically, I indicated three comforts. So first of all, commercial comforts, meaning long-term supplies from Russia, lenience in price offers, because, if you would think about market economies, giving a better price adapted to a case-by-case situation is much more difficult. Because you have to comply in competitive markets with competition rules, with state aid rules. There are many competitors among you, which basically imply certain market trends. While in concentrated markets like Russia, when there is one company responsible for supplies, for external operations, you have absolute freedom to give better price offers adapted to some specific situations. And this was exactly the game which Gazprom was playing, splitting basically the European partnership, the European solidarity, offering better prices to stronger partners, and using monopoly positions in other countries, and of course establish business links and known practices. The other is of course personal comfort. This is something which I, as a European, ashamed of. So basically, there are much more people who were involved in this, definitely. And I just wanted to show two examples. So ex-Chancellor of Germany, Mr. Schroeder, who was really pushing towards deeper connections with Russia, and he landed in Gazprom, and even in the current situation when Russia started full-fledged war against Ukraine, he is still there, still representing, so to say, European values in Gazprom. Another lady, for those who don't know, is Frau Kneißl, who did some tanzen with Putin, and after leaving her office as a foreign minister in Austria, she landed in Rosneft, another giant of Russia's energy. So as ABBA was singing "Money, Money, Money," that was one of the comforts and one of the reasons why, unfortunately, Europe was not immune to Russia's energy pressure. As concerned, the third one is a general comfort of naivete. Some fairy tales, some even romanticized, position and attitude towards Russia, which hopefully is also something which will be forgotten also in Western Europe well, among those people who don't know, who didn't have to live under Russia's oppressions. Okay, so here comes 2022. Enough of flashbacks. So what do we have? We had 2 years of COVID, and we were thinking that things might be much better in 2022. But here comes New Year, and Russia gives us partially a surprise with a full-scale invasion to Ukraine, escalation of chemical and nuclear warfare, terrorism and genocide against civilians in Ukraine, energy supply blackmail, and gas supply cutoffs to Bulgaria and Poland. And this is just for the starters. What does it end? And I put a question mark whether it really ends, because it will yet to be seen how actually the strength of Europe, the solidarity which is kind of being built on, though there are of course several exceptions as always. But in my understanding, at least to the majority of our European populations, this ended up this mirage of comforts that we truly cannot rely on those comforts without doing something. Hopefully finally ended trust, and I don't expect you to hear anymore that Russia is a trusted energy or any other business partner. But who knows? As I said, not all Europeans are still coming out of it. And what is really important, it ended public apathy, public ignorance. Because I have never seen, at least in my life, so many riots, so many demonstrations of people in the West against Russia and in support to Ukraine, in support against the aggression, Russian aggression, in support of a civilized policy. And these demonstrations, these movements of society is a very important trigger to push forward our politicians to make the decisions. And those who were following closely, as I did, all this escalation, all this war campaign, I saw a kind of lethargy among European politicians for several days, because many experts said that Ukraine will not survive, that Russia will come over, and of course there will be lots of concerns, deep concerns, grave concerns, the international modus operandi. But apparently Ukraine kicked back strongly. And with public awareness, with public push, politicians started making decisions. And even Germany is now seriously considering getting rid of Russian gas and oil. So this is a very important element and exact example how things can be changed. And on the other hand, when you see that there are only hundreds of people going to streets in Russia, you have absolutely no results, because hundreds can be easily arrested, can be easily abused. Millions wouldn't be. So here are realities of 2022 and a little bit of the Baltic case. So in 2012, I took very symbolically a number of decades. So in 2012, we were 100% dependent on Russian gas. In 2022, meaning now, we are not dependent on Russian gas at all. So how did we do that? So first of all, the first thing which we did, we started active market liberalization and opening. Of course, it was very tricky to open the market in 100% concentrated environment where Gazprom's local representatives were actually having the entire cake. But unbundling in particular, which came from the third energy package, helped us to get rid of Gazprom, literally, to get it out as a company owning both infrastructure, transmission infrastructure, and the sole owner of supply business. The second very important factor was opening the LNG terminal in Klaipėda. Here it is in the map. Actually, there is no time to tell all the war stories, what has been reached and how big opposition, even in Brussels, even in our own country was. It was a huge campaign funded by Kremlin not to have this LNG terminal, but Well, thankfully, we had a very strong trinity of our president at the time, prime minister at the time, and minister of energy at the time, who basically uphold this strong political and strategic line. And now, well, for several years already, this LNG terminal case is being presented as a huge European success story. Then, of course, we increased our interconnectors, first of all, with Finland. Well, this didn't give us an alternative route of supply, so to say, but this was a very important step towards joining, well, integrating the regional gas market. And a very important development, which took, if I'm not mistaken, for almost 20 years, and there were many different stages of this project. But actually, finally, earlier this month, Geopolitical, an interconnector between Poland and Lithuania, was launched, and Poland is already, Pignik, Polish gas company, is already buying natural gas through Lithuanian LNG terminal. Also, we have a underground gas storage in Šimkus in Latvia, which is also a very important piece of infrastructure. Also, the LNG market and connection with Poland gave us, for the Baltic region, access to worldwide gas markets. And apart from the gas sector, what we did right and what we continue doing right, this means exploiting local electricity generation potential. Estonians, well, have a God-given gift, if I may say so, all shales. This is the nice mineral who burns very well and can produce energy. But of course, we also exploit wind, solar. There are huge plans to develop offshore wind, and in particular, Lithuania gas was very much supplemented by biomass, especially in the district heating sector. So, of course, if one is a devil's advocate, they can say, listen, guys, in the Baltics and in Finland, all in all, your gross consumption over the year doesn't reach 6 BCM of natural gas, while comparing Austria, for example, consumes close to 9 BCM of gas per year, and Germany 85 BCM per year. So, of course, these economies are uncomparable. But on the other hand, I would counter-argue by saying that Germany, if you're taking Germany as an example and saying that, well, this is not so easy to get rid of these 85 BCMs to replace them with some other energy source. But at the same time, Germany is much bigger economy, much bigger economic power than the Baltic states are. And of course, Germany had all the levers in its hands, but unfortunately, the last decade and more, the politics of the last decade and more turned into completely different direction, closing internal energy sources, primarily meaning nuclear power plants based completely on emotional and politically / commercially motivated decisions, and then, of course, increasing dependency on natural gas. Last remark in this regard on the Baltic case. So why did we do that? So I will respond in only 3 words. So as Karolina was quoting Polish guy, so because we knew. And for Lithuanian case, I can tell you that we knew for the last 700 years. This is our history with constant fights, and well, most of them were being oppressed by Russia. So we knew, and that's why we were preparing. And we were trying to tell others as well, but unfortunately, not many were listening. So what's next for the EU? I will not go into the number details. Definitely, Karolina presented them very well. There is not so much optimism if you talk numbers. So I will try to spread more optimism by talking concepts. Or directions, streamlines for our further development. So first of all, maximum gas supply diversification, because very obviously gas as a transitory fuel, as we call it in the energy transition, cannot be replaced, just like that. So of course, focusing on LNG markets and alternative supplies from Norway, Azerbaijan, Africa, wherever we can get gas. is, of course, one of the short-term priorities. Maximum energy efficiency, if we're talking both in general, universal energy consumption and individual. So this is something what each and every citizen of the European Union can do, a little bit reduce or minimize his or her comforts and to start saving and to start consuming a little bit less. Streamlined decarbonization campaign. Again, this is one of the flagship policies of the European Union, but it's very obvious that it has to get a new speed, a new dimension, and to be implemented much faster than it was expected before. Increase of network capacities to accommodate more renewable energy sources, because in many countries this is a problem, that basically the electricity grid becomes not sufficient to accommodate the increasing numbers, increasing installed capacities of renewable energy facilities. And this is something, again, one of the main directions of energy investments to be done in the electricity infrastructure. Baseload generation dilemma, because gas very much contributes to baseload and of course to balancing, including renewable energy sources. And again, at current technological stage, it cannot be replaced easily. But of course, we have to think about green methane programs, we have to think about hydrogen, and we have to rethink for once nuclear energy as well, because, well, if we still are thinking about Chernobyl as well, kind of a threshold of a tragedy and human inability to fully control nuclear reactions. Actually, technologies and nuclear safety since then developed a lot. And in this regard, in my at least understanding, Europe has to rethink its nuclear energy strategies, and probably in the current situation, new nuclear renaissance might be an option as well. And of course, constant pressure on politicians and decision makers. As I mentioned, we cannot let once again that, you know, tons and things bring us into energy dependency or any other economic dependency in Europe. As colleagues, energy experts calculated, I took this slide from a recent study published by Bellona and others. So basically, it appears that wise people calculate the ability of the European Union to stop Russian gas imports by 2025. It's unfortunately, it's a bit late because, as I mentioned, those hundreds of billions of euros coming from Europe to Russia, what they're funding actually military campaign and war against Ukraine and other nasty things that Russia is doing. But just focusing on the actions, so of course Fit for 55, which is a mechanism and a future legislative framework to implement the Green Deal in Europe needs to be implemented, and it includes, as concerns the gas sector, a recast gas directive which brings hydrogen into the scope of the European gas market. Definitely, as I mentioned, energy efficiency measures, we cannot avoid that. Electrification and heat pumps, including obviously new electricity market segments brought by the clean energy package, such as energy storage, and definitely renewable electricity developments and non-Russian gas imports. So my last remark for the presentation is that truly, as Karolina said, we might get cold during next winter, especially those living in the northern hemisphere, northern part of Europe. But we truly can refuse certain comforts for the common good, because all of Europe's common good is currently at stake, and it's currently in threat. So each of us individually have to do whatever we can to stand with Ukraine, because apparently Ukraine is fighting all of ours a fight for Europe. Thank you very much, everyone, and I'll be open for your questions.
So thank you very much for your presentation, Andrius, which was very interesting. And I have a question now. We see that LNG would be the short-term solution most politicians think they could handle with. But what is about the capacity of the currently existing LNG tanker fleet worldwide? Would it be sufficient to provide enough LNG for Europe, for example? What do you think?
Currently, definitely not. I misheard if you mentioned the Baltic states or it just was an imaginary echo. But if we are talking about European LNG capacities, well, definitely current capacities are not sufficient to suffice the gross demand for natural gas. I don't know the exact numbers. As regards more regionally looking, Polish LNG capacities are not enough to suffice the Polish demand. Baltic LNG terminal is close, but still not enough. So basically, we will definitely have to have pipe gas coming from alternative sources if we are talking about a potential refusing Russian gas. And of course, we have to interconnect both systems and markets to get the utmost benefit of it. But on the other hand, LNG projects, especially small LNG, targeted LNG projects, can be implemented relatively fast. And actually, well, this spring, Finland and Estonia started thinking about bringing a small floating storage and regasification unit to the shores, a ship which basically could serve both systems, Finland and Estonia. And it is planned to have such ship already this year by winter season. So basically, well, some targeted measures, if finances, investments are properly directed, some positive developments in a short-term perspective can be reached.
And I would add that I mean, we can see this regional, and then you have, as Andrius explained, situation in Baltic. Then you can have a look maybe on southeast, and then you see that some solutions can be I mean, really in place for Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, North Macedonia, that part of the Europe, for I mean, bringing new LNG from Turkey as well. So this is this part of Europe. Then you have another part of Europe with huge capacity of LNG. I mean, UK, Spain, all fine, but then once when you have this LNG in Spain, it has to be passed further to France, but then you have obstacles in the network. I mean, then you will find all these actually technical things, somewhere even regulatory things, which were not solved for years. And then if you put Europe in a global perspective, then we have a lot of competitors with as Asia with much higher price. So this kind of solidarity thinking should be on global level. And then let's not forget, one thing is regasification capacity, and this is what we have in Europe and what we are built up. But then from other side, it should be enough liquefaction capacity in place and enough ships in place. And this cannot be really done so quickly, and especially not for this winter. I mean, in some 5 years period, 10 years period, all fine. But for this winter, I would say, I mean, we are going to save a lot in temperature-wise and consumption-wise. It's not going to be enough.
Do you think, is the EU capable of competing with Asian markets for the supply of LNG? And what tools for influence does the EU have on the worldwide LNG market? And what price would it have to pay?
I partially already answered this question. I mean, not going into the details with price, because we never know. I mean, it can change in this week and jump again on $3,000 per 1,000 cubic meters. But what is Europe actually is trying to do? It's trying to establish this, as Mr. Brix actually mentioned, this block buyer or joint purchase mechanism. So like putting more quantities at one side and then to have higher negotiation power, even to negotiate the prices with big suppliers. And then might work, let's put it in that way. And it can be also, I mean, backed with political support, but I don't see that, I don't know, European coming as a big buyer and then China would simply say, okay, fine, I don't know, half of our quantities can go to Europe or other economies in Korea or somewhere else.
You see, we should diversify the gas supply for Europe, and then we think we are free of leverage, political leverages. But when you regard the situation between Algeria and Spain, they have also now a problem because Spain is improving her situation with Morocco and Algeria dislikes this. So it also has reduced the gas volume to Spain. Do you think that it would be a great danger in the future that the other sources are also with leverages from some side?
Of course, all is interconnected and everybody has own issues. So then issue between Algeria, Morocco and Spain, yes, this is known from last year. Nevertheless, what I know, and that this is what I know from ENSOC calculations and everything, that I mean, there are two pipelines from Algeria to Spain. So one passing Morocco, and this is unfortunately bigger capacity, and another one crossing directly from Algeria to Spain. I know that Spanish stakeholders, Algerian and Italian TSOs and companies are in continuous discussion. So to see how much would then be needed for Spain from Algeria, what is not sufficient from LNG, I mean agreed LNG supplies, then this part maybe even can go more to Italy, and then Italy can give up of Azeri gas, I mean, to leave something more in Greece. And this is actually what I put on my last slide, that and what Andrius said, this, I mean, it's not only solidarity, it's this unity and consideration that we have to deal with this together. This already started because you have these TSO formats, LNG operators, traders coming in, and then really agreement, okay, fine, let's see what would be the most optimal way to supply all, not to be focused on only country-to-country issues. And I really hope that this is the moment that Europe can prove these European values and cooperativeness and solidarity with Ukraine, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Just one thought. Actually, the current situation opened a completely new or probably revised diplomacy platform, energy diplomacy platform, because those previously considered unfriendly nations or unfriendly countries, like for example the relationship between Venezuela and the United States, you see that the dialogue is already ongoing, and both Europe and the United States will have to rethink its energy diplomacy, and basically in those directions where previously were considered as unfriendly, things are changing, and basically new connections and new links are needed, and they are being now searched for.
And what do you think, for example, Karolina, could play, what role could the Trans-Balkan pipeline playing in securing gas delivery security in Southeast Europe and in Ukraine?
Oh, Trans-Balkan pipeline can play a really significant role because first it's empty because Turkish stream brought gas to this region, because before Trans-Balkan pipeline was always locked with this long-term Gazprom booking and actually fears of Gazprom reactions. Now it's empty. It can be used in totally different directions, so from south to north. There are limitations in Bulgaria and in Romanian network here and there, and interconnection points, but this can be really significant for Bulgaria, for Moldova for sure, and certain quantities which could miss to Ukraine as well. So, and actually, just last week, this initiative in Bulgaria, in Sofia, started to really consider exactly the actions along Trans-Balkan pipeline.
We always hear that Russia has a possibility to sell his gas to Asia, but there are not really pipelines in this region. How long does it need to build them? What do you think, Andrius?
Well, as we saw, building pipelines is not easy even in the European Union, where we have a level playing field as concerns the general regulatory framework for energy markets, and also very much harmonized construction procedures, even taxes, and things like that. Though Russian and Chinese cooperation, I wouldn't rely on it very much now. China is still in a very strange position as regards its geopolitical stance. Well, it kind of doesn't support Russia, but on the other hand, remains in cooperation. But taking into account the sanctions, the general downturn of Russian economy, I don't think that increase of pipe capacities from Russia to China are now possible in the nearest future, in the upcoming years. So basically, what Europe and the United States should be doing should continue not only with military support to Ukraine, but also with excessive economic pressure upon Russia, that it even doesn't think about extending or somehow relocating its commercial interest. This is how to say our common best interest. But even if the status quo remains, for example, as it is right now today, I wouldn't expect that in upcoming years this is possible. I mean, to increase interconnection capacities between Russia and China. This requires, for if not for a decade, then close to that.
If I may add, now what is in operation is this pipeline supplying 38 BCM to China, and it's not even fully utilized. And another one is kind of to be finalized. Let's say it might be maybe happen in the next few years, but this is only 10 BCM. So if you compare actually also Russian dependence on European market, and this is this 155 BCM. So this cannot be switched so easily on another side to Asia. And actually Russia needs this income from energy. I mean, even now, Mr. Brix mentioned at the beginning how much investments are needed to replace all these Russian supplies with other investments and so on. But even now, European Union is paying 1 billion per day for coal, gas. I mean, coal not anymore, but for gas and for oil. So this is per day. This is not in 5 years' time to construct something else. So numbers can look huge, but actually, I think that Europe can do it, as Andrius showed in 5 years' time.
If the situation would change sometime in the further future, I would say, with Russia, you have the problem that gas extraction cannot immediately be closed down and then reopened again. How long do you need then to re-establish the extraction?
You mean production fields in Russia?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a petroleum engineer, but I was not involved in explorations for a long time. But what I know that for each field is actually the best solution if this flow is established on continuous level. So fields doesn't like this shutdown and then opening again. But it's not that it's going to be destroyed fully. I mean, let's see. I mean, it's more difficult for oil fields because they are more sensitive to this cutting the flows in the field as such than the gas fields. But for sure, it cannot be so easily. I mean, Russia cannot switch all this and shut down all these fields, which will not be needed for European Union. Not that all this gas will be lost or whatever, but it's not so easy.
So for the closing remarks, I would like to ask you both, what scenarios do you expect in the next 3 weeks, in the next 3 months, in 1 year?
In the next 3 months, more European countries will be cut from the supply. And the first, those who are kind of easy targets, I would expect, I don't know, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, who knows, Greece. I mean, now I'm naming those with less quantities imported from Russia. So this I see in next 3 months. Maybe even decrease of transit, which already actually started. Then struggling to fill the storages, so more sudden new sources to come, hopefully. By the end of the year, more these energy efficiency measures, maybe some joint purchase agreement to come in place. And then a lot of measures prepared for the next summer and then winter behind.
Andrius, was this your precast?
Karolina perfectly described what is coming in 3 months, because 3 weeks will not change anything, most likely. But I just want to look at it from a little bit of a more political perspective. So what I would expect in 1 year is, on one hand, an established European strategy to streamline decarbonization on one hand, and to another to decrease dependence on Russian gas. But at the same time, in 1 year, what I personally very heartily expect, hope for, and believe in is that we will be already celebrating Ukraine's victory. And then I'm pretty sure that we will come up to our usual European dilemma that, well, maybe everything is now okay, the peace is established, and again, we can go for, cleaning our relations with Russia. This is very dangerous. So if now in this 1 year period, we as Europeans are going to establish our energy independent strategy, the full-fledged energy independent strategy, it is important that we keep with it and keep going in that direction without looking back. This was the momentum, very painful momentum. Ukraine is suffering for that, but we have to use this momentum and to go forward. So this would be my address.
Thank you very much. And I see that Ambassador Brix would also add some closing remark.
Thank you very much. I would just like to say thank you to our experts, that they were not only frank, but trying to bring together the economic elements of the issue and the political elements. And I guess we all feel we need to discuss both. And I do understand that from the point of view of Lithuania, for instance, it's very obvious that it looks not only sad, but it looks disappointing that what your country said and did from 2014 onwards was not taken up by other EU member countries, which brings us to the point, and I hope it's not only true for the gas market, that we still have a lot to learn from the Central and Eastern European member countries, not only deriding them from time to time for not understanding what the club of the EU is about, but really taking in their experiences. So I'm also thankful for this. As an ambassador in Moscow, I had once the chance to be invited by the CEO of Gazprom, Mr. Miller, into his war room. And he proudly showed me a huge screen where he could see on a lifetime basis wherever an exact amount is extracted, transported, and supplied to all the partners of Gazprom. And it was a roadmap, actually, that you could see there. When I saw this map, I realized once again that this is a political issue. That's a highly political issue that we are discussing. I do understand that Andrius especially talked about the comforts, the so-called comforts we took in the Western world. But as a last word, let me say some of the steps that may be necessary, like discussing shale gas in a different way again in Europe, or discussing how we can make sure that the US interest and the European interest is aligned, were not addressed. But this is an ongoing discussion that we are all following. And I'm very happy that both of you accepted our invitation. The Vienna School of International Studies is the place here to discuss these issues. I have to admit that one of our former regular presenters and professors here was an energy expert with the name of Karin Kneißl. Before she became Austrian foreign minister, she was teaching about energy issues, including at the Diplomatic Academy here in Vienna. We somehow lost contact to her in the last few years, and I'm not going to comment on this anymore, but just to let you know a little bit from this personal point of view, how much not only Austria, but many of our countries are involved in this dilemma we are in Europe at the moment. But I very much liked your positive outlook at the end, that we have strategies, short-term, medium-term, long-term strategies, not only to survive, but to make sure that we are really less dependent, also politically. So thank you from my side.